We are officially in March now, which means it's time for your February Fraser Valley real estate market update. What's going on, guys? My name's Alex Dunbar with the Dunbar Real Estate Group and 𝐅𝐸𝐵 Treeline Realty based out of the Cloverdale, Langley area. And if this is your first time on my channel, I put out weekly videos on the Fraser Valley real estate market in regards to community tours as well as relevant real estate topics. So if that's something you're interested in, I suggest you subscribe to my channel and hit the bell so you're notified whenever I put out a new video. And if you're wanting this crazy real estate market to start to balance itself out, I'll ask that you hit that like button to show your support. In this video, I'm going to go over a general overview of the Fraser Valley real estate market as well as touching specifically on Surrey, Langley, and White Rock. The numbers I'm going to be going over today are the change in average prices in each of these areas. So let's start it off with a general overview of the Fraser Valley as a whole. In February, we saw a total of 1,824 sales, which is 35.2% less than February last year, but 39.2% more than last month. We also saw 3,742 new listings, which is up 14.6% from last February and 75.3% more than last month. And as of March 1st, we have 3,487 active listings, which is up from around 2,000 at the beginning of the month. So the good news is our numbers are well above last year in terms of new listings and well below in terms of sales. And as for active listings, we're up by almost 75% from just 1 month ago. So overall, this is giving buyers more opportunities and sellers aren't necessarily getting as many showings or offers. But what sort of impact has this had on prices? Well, we'll get to that in a minute, but first of all, I want to go over the average days on market. So for detached homes, the average time it took to sell was 12 days. For townhomes, it was 11 days, and for apartments, it was 13 days. So properties are still selling extremely quickly, most in under a week if priced correctly. However, we are starting to see more and more go through offer presentation date and either not getting offers or not getting a good enough offer that they'd like to accept. So as I've mentioned in previous videos, buyers and sellers are in a bit of a tug of war right now. But as time goes on, it seems to be that buyers are slowly gaining some power back. Now, one more thing I want to mention before I get into the actual prices today is that I'm using average prices and not benchmark prices. If you want to learn a little bit more about the differences between the two and when you should be using each, I did a video just last week and you can find that right up here. But I will explain that in a little further detail later in the video. So let's take a look at price changes in the Fraser Valley. When looking at the month-over-month changes from January of 2022 to February of 2022, detached home prices were up 4.4% from 1.819 million to just under 1.9 million. Townhome prices were up 6.4% from just under 930,000 to around 989,000, and apartment prices were up 5.8% from 575,000 to just under 609,000. So overall, a very strong month. These are massive numbers to see in only a 1 month period. More typically, we would see numbers like this over an entire year. And if we were to compare the average price changes to the benchmark price changes, they're all very similar. And this just goes to show that there weren't necessarily a ton of outliers. Now, moving on, let's take a look at Cloverdale prices. Detached homes were down 0.2% from 1.824 million to 1.820 million. Townhome prices were up 0.7% from 958,000 to 964,000. And apartment prices were down 9% from 586,000 to 533,000. Now you may be wondering, how could apartment prices go down by 9% in 1 month when everything else is going up? Well, this is one of those examples where the average change in price doesn't necessarily best reflect it. So for this example, if we were to take the benchmark price, it would be 643,000. And this would be an increase of 5.9% in comparison to last month. So why does it show up as being a 9% decrease when we take a look at the average prices? The first reason being there was only 19 condo sales in February. And because there was such a low sample size, this makes the data easier to skew if we have a very high or a very low price. So to show you what I mean, take a look here as you can see that 7 out of the 19 sales were below the 490,000 mark, with the bottom 3 being below 360,000. So clearly, this is what ended up pulling that average down. Moving on, let's take a look at Central Surrey. Average detached prices were up 2.8% from 1.937 million to 1.996 million. Townhome prices were up 4.3% from 942,000 to 982,000. And apartment prices were down 3.1% from $570,000 to $553,000. So for the most part, all these numbers seem to make sense. There's nothing that was extremely high or extremely low, and there was a big enough sample size of sales that it makes sense to use the average here. The only statistic that we could examine a little bit closer here is the price change in apartments. If we were to take a look at the benchmark price, instead of being negative, it was actually plus 7%. But there was a pretty large sample size with 47 sales in the month of February, so I don't really want to change that. Moving on, let's take a look at North Surrey. Detached home prices were down 2.4% from $1.928 million to $1.882 million. Townhome prices were up 5.3% from $882,000 to $929,000. And apartments were up 1.9% from $550,000 to $560,000. Again, taking a look at these numbers, I wouldn't really change anything. There were pretty large sample sizes for each type of property, so we're gonna leave it as it is. Next, moving on to South Surrey and White Rock. So detached houses were up 10.5% from $2.173 million to $2.402 million. Townhome prices were up 4.2% from $1.046 million to $1.090 million. And apartment prices were up 23.4% from $670,000 to $826,000. So immediately, I'm sure you recognize that there's some pretty ridiculous numbers here. So I'm gonna break them down for you and show you why they're showing that way. First of all, if we're to take a look at the benchmark price for detached homes, it's actually $2.040 million. So the relative increase here from last month was only 5.9%. So why did the average price change show it was up by over 10%? Well, if you take a look here, there were 103 sales and 23 of those were over 2.8 million, with the top 6 being between 4.1 to 5.5 million. So obviously having a big chunk of higher end luxury listings pulled that average up. In regards to apartments, the benchmark price was $665,000. So the relative increase in comparison to last month was 5.1%. So again, let's take a deeper dive into the numbers. Well, first of all, there were 62 total sales in the White Rock South Surrey area, and 30 of these were actually in White Rock. So if you know anything about the White Rock real estate market, prices are typically higher there and come at a premium because of its proximity to the ocean. And this becomes even more apparent when we break it down and show that 9 of those 62 sales were over $1 million, with the top sale price being just shy of $2.75 million. So once again, clearly some of those higher end luxury sales pulled the average up. So there realistically wasn't just a massive 23.4% increase in condos there, but they still did have a very strong month. And moving on to our last and final market, it's Langley. Detached home prices were up 10% from $1.787 million to $1.965 million. Townhome prices were up 7.4% from $940,000 to $1,009,000. And apartment prices were up 3.7% from $618,000 to just over $640,000. So the big standout here is definitely the plus 10% for detached houses. Because when we look at the benchmark price, it's only $1.723 million. And this is only a relative increase of 5% over last month. So breaking it down even further, there was a total of 102 sales in February, and 16 of those sales were over $2.5 million, with the top 10 sales ranging between $3.1 to $5.2 million. And the reason for this is that there were a lot more larger acreage style properties further east in Langley that pulled that average price up. But once again, the detached market in Langley did have an incredibly strong month. In regards to townhomes, you might think 7.4% is a huge number, which it is, but even when we look at the benchmark increase, it was still over 5%. And in my personal opinion, Langley townhomes are getting pretty close to their peak. Now that the average price for a Langley townhome is over $1 million, I don't think we're going to be able to see it run up much further, at least in the short term. Additionally, as Langley detached houses are almost at the $2 million mark, I think that may also be another benchmark that they'll have trouble surpassing. But I still wouldn't be surprised if we hit that number in the next month or two. So overall, we are seeing a massive increase in inventory, a decrease in the number of sales year over year, and we are seeing a decrease in the amount of traffic to most listings. Now, don't get me wrong, we're still far from a balanced market, but we are starting to see some balance return. And it's really depending on the property type, location, and price point. As I mentioned in previous videos, some of the more rare and attractive properties are still getting a ton of interest. However, those that are less attractive, maybe located on a busy street or some sort of a cookie cutter condo, are starting to see less activity. So I want to reinforce what I've been saying over these past couple of weeks, that as a buyer, you need to be ready to go because opportunities are going to start to present themselves. And as a seller, I think we're pretty close to the peak of the market. We're about a week or two away, in my opinion, especially with the Bank of Canada announcing its first rate hike since 2018 today, even though I think this is just going to be more psychological than anything. But again, if you are thinking about selling, it's a good time to start having conversations about whether it makes sense to do so or not, because I think your window of opportunity to optimize your sale price is starting to close. And that's about going to do it for the video today. So if you did get any value from it, I'll ask that you smash that like button. And if you're interested in seeing future real estate videos just like this one, as well as community tours in the Lower Mainland, I suggest you subscribe to my channel and hit the bell so you're notified whenever I put out a new video. And if you've been thinking about buying or selling in Surrey, Langley, or the rest of the Fraser Valley, you can book a call with me by scrolling down, hitting the first link, and choosing a time that works best for you. And at the very least, this will give us an opportunity to chat about what your real estate goals are and what your current options are. But once again, I want to thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.